Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You can find all the episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. You'll find everything about me. Scan the QR code. You see my 6 podcasts or go to roycon.com. If you're looking for virtual assistants, go to va.world. My guest has been building in the blockchain space since 2017. He's the Director of Business Development at spaceid, the leading digital identity platform, powering trustless identity solutions for users, AI agents, dApps, and beyond. Prior to this, he worked at NFTrade, I think it's pronounced, as the head of growth and strategy at a blockchain-focused hedge fund. As a contributor to the various crypto news outlets, he has worked privately with blockchain networks and applications collectively worth billions on their business development strategy and user-facing interactions. From Tel Aviv, Israel, please welcome Harrison Seletsky.
Hi, Roy. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, no problem. I suppose I always start kind of with your blockchain journey before you start. I mean, you've got some serious positions that you're working in, but how the whole thing for you started.
Yeah, for sure. So I was first introduced actually to Ethereum in late 2016, even before Bitcoin, by some friends. Started to really understand, what was possible with decentralized applications, what the value accrual looked like, how it could be distributed back to users. So it spoke to me on a very psychological level on what these types of applications are able to offer. Then you start learning about Bitcoin. You start asking bigger questions like, what is money? What is private money? What is public money? How can this be used? Why has a system like this never been created before? So once I kind of fell down that rabbit hole, there was no turning back for me. I just found it extremely fascinating, very interesting. Started from the financial side, working for a crypto focused hedge fund, mostly doing fundamental analysis around different tokens and early crypto companies. I definitely enjoyed the financial and technical side, but I'm definitely a people person. I like working with others. I like building. I like growing. And that kind of led me to different endeavors in the space. So worked for different crypto focused news outlets on their marketing and content creation before joining NFTrade, a multi-chain NFT marketplace and aggregator, where I was leading a lot of the growth and strategy side. And then came on to the spaceid business team a little over 2 years ago, and I've been building in the decentralized identity space ever since.
And because, I mean, a lot of the people that are kind of working in the crypto world, they're traveling around, going to different events and everything. Are you able to do that? Because I know there's a bit of craziness going on in your part of the world, unfortunately. Is it okay? Are you able to travel?
Yeah, I was just in Dubai for Token 2049. Definitely a little harder to travel than it used to be. But we make it work. Life goes on in a lot of ways, and just trying to make the best of the situation.
So just before we delve into the company itself, I always like to know kind of wallets that you'd recommend or that you use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a boomer in that sense. I'm happy with MetaMask. I've been a MetaMask guy since the beginning. I also use my Ledger for cold storage. I think that is a super useful tool. Having one hot wallet that you're comfortable with, one cold wallet that you're comfortable with. We work closely with Binance Wallet, OKX, Trust Wallet, BitGet, from the company level. So there's a lot of great wallet providers out there. It kind of just depends on the UX you're comfortable with. But for me, MetaMask has always been, useful and easy to use, and haven't felt the need to switch much ever since.
Excellent. So this is one that I get a different answer nearly every time. Who do you think created Bitcoin?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of people think Hal Finney. Um, I don't know if I have any, meaningful way to provide a good opinion on that, just because it's so controversial and hard to say. Although I do think it is extremely beneficial to Bitcoin that it does have that anonymous creator. I think that kind of not only adds to the lore, but also it's kind of like immaculate conception as the only cryptocurrency that was really born from nothing and had like a very natural linear growth pattern where anyone could get involved at any point. I'm also very bullish on Ethereum and, decentralized smart contract platforms. But with someone like Vitalik, or even on Solana, someone like Anatoly, they have such a major impact and their opinion has so much weight in the ecosystem. If anything happens to them, or if there's any sort of, conflict between them and the community, that can have a massive impact on the ecosystem as a whole. Where with Bitcoin, that's not really possible because there's no central figure that's identifiable as like moving the ecosystem. So, not sure who invented Bitcoin. Maybe we'll never know, and maybe that's for the best.
No, excellent. Yeah. So spaceid, there's a few things. I suppose I have a list of different things there. AI agents. Let's start off with that one.
Sure. Yeah, so from a high level, what we're building at spaceid is an on-chain identification platform. This can be for users, for on-chain assets, and in this case, for AI agents. Essentially, it provides a human-readable identifier in place of the standard OX wallet address or contract address. So, for example, Roy, let's say we have two agents, they're doing business together, and you want to verify that you're actually interacting with my agent. Of course, you could have the agent wallet address, you could have whatever contracts they deployed, you can have all of those OX wallet addresses, but those are kind of hard to decipher. They're randomized, they all look like one another, and we provide more like a username experience, a username like experience. So let's say you wanted to interact with my arbitrage bot. It could be labeled as Harrison's arbitrage bot.ai or Harrison's arbitrage bot.bnb, depending on the chain that it lives on. And you essentially have a much easier and clearer on-chain username that you can use to identify these different entities. In this case, it would be AI agents. So as there continues to be a proliferation of agents, as they launch their own tokens, as they launch soon their own dApps and their own strategies, we think this verification mechanism is going to be very important for end users to be able to feel confident when they're doing these interactions. So we're building out that framework now. It's not going to be very different on the technical level from how we provide identification capabilities to users, but it's going to be to a whole new swath of wallets and deployers that are all autonomously managed, which are these AI agents.
Excellent. Excellent. You might tell me about dApps. What's that?
Yeah, sure. So dApps are decentralized applications. These are traditional applications. They could be decentralized finance applications like selling, lending, loading, trading. They can be social applications. They can be on-chain applications with different leaderboards and quests. And at spaceid, we provide the same functionality. So it's again bringing these on-chain applications to different, in this case, decentralized applications, bringing these on-chain usernames. So, for example, let's say you're on Hyperliquid or you're on a questing platform like Galaxy, and you're trading with other users or you're competing in a leaderboard. Through our SDK or our API, you can integrate these domain names to bring these on-chain usernames to the specific application. So, for example, like Galaxy, let's say you and I want to complete these quests. We are interested in a new ecosystem, and if we complete the quests, we can earn rewards. Instead of me having to, track your wallet individually, I can track a domain like royd.bnb or any pseudonym, trader123.bnb or .eth or any other acronym, that is using this on-chain identity. And now you can use that username within the application. So I can see, oh, Roy has more points than me because I see his username is higher than mine on the leaderboard. This way, I don't need to track every single OX wallet address descripted directly. I can just use the username. Same with trading. If I want to send assets across a bridge, if I'm bridging, USDT from Solana to Ethereum, I can just send it directly to my on-chain identity instead of having to send it to a wallet address. So pretty much anywhere there's an on-chain interaction, you can use the decentralized identities to improve that user experience and give it that more traditional Web2 feel.
And like with all of this that you're doing, it's kind of preventing where people send the block the crypto and it goes into the ether. The way that you're setting it up is to prevent that, because every single person that I've met, they've done that. And now, if anytime I'm doing anything, it's like paranoia. You do a bank transfer and you do something wrong, it just doesn't disappear, it just doesn't go and it comes back. Yeah. But with this, it's like, so I always do a small amount. I've never made the mistake, but still, the amount of people that I've talked to. So, like, I've heard another show that you were on. There's no one else doing this really as such, is it? Are you the first to the table that has kind of created what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're definitely not the first. We're one of the bigger in terms of trying to approach it from all of these different chains. The first domain name provider in the space would be ENS, the Ethereum name service. They're definitely one of the biggest, kind of the go-to brand in the space, but they only cater to the Ethereum blockchain. So obviously it's very important. It's still the most used chain in the space, but there's many chains that have a variety of different users. So there's also Unstoppable Domains. There's also the Solana name service. And we're kind of an amalgamation of all of those. We aggregate all of these big ecosystems. So the millions of users with an Ethereum name service domain can use them in the wallets we've integrated into, in the dApps we've integrated into. They can register them in our interface, even though it's not one of our products directly, because we want to make sure that users are able to utilize these decentralized identity capabilities across all of the applications we've integrated in. So yeah, like you said, sending and receiving funds is a very basic use case and a very important use case for these domain names. Even people like us that have a lot of experience in the space, we're always double checking every single letter and number when we send funds. Because like you said, once you hit send, there's no middleman, there's no bank that will be able to retrieve your funds if you made that error. So this makes it much more safer, much more easier, and much more verifiable to do these types of transactions, almost like when you're sending an email address. If you're sending an email address to a peer, you don't necessarily need to double check it because it's usually just their name or some sort of easy identifier. It's going to end up in their inbox. And this is the same way we approach that in the same way, just specifically for the crypto space. So we've kind of taken all of the best parts of what's been available in the decentralized identity space and then built on that, added more features, added more capabilities, and made it able to reach a much wider user base.
And like I remember, like I've got some stuff there with Unstoppable Domains, but I remember buying the first one that I got. It wasn't with them, it was someone else. Thinking that I've been told you pay once and that's it. It's not like normal domains where you're paying all the time. And the strange thing is now the prices are double what they used to be on a normal domain.
Yeah, yeah.
But like with the Unstoppable, have they checked? Because there's like they constantly come up with different dot XYZ dot this dot. Are they doing that
Sure.
now as well that you're paying yearly? Because I was kind of looking at the emails, or is it that you buy it now and you have it forever?
Yeah, so that depends on a platform by platform basis. I think Unstoppable Domains has a one-time payment, so you don't need to repay for it every year. A lot of the domain name services, though, us included, we do have this yearly payment model. Because it presents interesting opportunities for our buyers. If you register a very rare domain name, it could have a lot of value that you may want to be able to sell to someone else. Maybe down the line, if it's expensive, you don't want to continue paying that price, but someone else does. So when you do this one-time model, it's definitely useful and valuable, but it kind of only rewards the early users. If someone's coming in later, they may not be able to access some of these more premium domains because someone who was there really early bought everything up and then they'll never have to renew it. So there's definitely pros and cons to each model. We definitely think that it's more fair to go on a yearly renewal basis. Because if you own a really rare domain name, it's up to you to continue to renew that if it's something you want to have control over. If not, then it can go back to the market. It can, the fees can be regenerated and paid back to the community as well. So there's multiple ways to be successful in this space. It just kind of depends on the preference and the model of the entity.
No, I think what you just said, like the pros and cons. If you're using it, it's great. It's a fantastic advantage. But I saw it even with the Unstoppable Domains. There was like people bought thousands and then they were trying to flog them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it kind of ruined it really because they were trying to
Yeah.
grab everything early. And the other thing is even with the main domains, like if you have a company and someone's getting it, they're just getting it for financial purposes. That's kind of fraudulent as well. I know it's kind of like, hey, I know about this before you, but when you think of it, it's
Yeah.
not really ethical. And I wish that would stop as well.
Yeah, I guess it depends how you approach it. I mean, you can have, let's say you have an outlook like, oh, this domain might be sought after because it's focusing on a specific industry. That's just strategic. But yeah, if you're using insider information, then that definitely borders the line of on ethics, on whether it's ethically responsible or, to use this early information. But that can be like any market. If someone has insider early information, it's up to them how they decide to use it and whether or not that is, ethical or moral on their end.
Okay, perfect. So you've launched a payment system, yeah, for this.
Yeah, yeah. So we launched our latest product iteration called Payment ID. And what Payment ID is focused on is improving the exchange deposit process, making it safer and easier for users that are both interacting on chain, like in decentralized applications, as well as off chain, like centralized exchanges. So, what you can do now with Payment ID is map or bind any of your centralized exchange deposit addresses to an identity. So let's say you registered the identity Roy. You could then map any exchange deposit address. So Binance, Bybit, OKX, KuCoin. And anytime you want to send funds from your wallet to that exchange, all you have to do is send to an identity like Roy at Binance or Roy at Bybit or Roy at KuCoin. And this can be for any EVM asset, any Solana asset, or Bitcoin. So again, it's really just about simplifying that process, making it easier and safer and more verifiable for users to do these interactions. Once you're binding your address once, you never have to do it again. So every time you want to send funds to that exchange, whether you want to buy or sell or trade, and you can confidently do that without double checking, double crossing, making sure you're not going to send funds to a chain that can't accept it on a new exchange. It really just eliminates a lot of those errors or a lot of those second guesses, and just makes it more fluid to deposit. So we're working with a bunch of different wallets as well as different exchanges to automate this process. Right now, you can do everything manually. So you just copy your deposit address from the exchange once, you bind it to your payment ID on our website, and then it's done. But soon you'll be able to log in directly with your exchange account into our payment ID system, and then all of the address binding will happen automatically. So you just need to log in once. You keep all of your data. We're not able to do any interactions on the exchange side. It's just to bind those addresses so that you never make a wrong wallet deposit again. So this is a super useful product that we're seeing a lot of interest from both the exchange and the wallet side. From the exchange side, it eliminates a lot of the support they need to provide to users when they're doing these deposits, or if there's an error, it mitigates that entirely. And it also offers a really interesting angle and use case for wallets. Especially wallets that are aligned with exchanges. It makes it much more fluid to do these deposits. So currently, Payment ID is live within MetaMask as well as a few other smaller wallets. And we're going to continue to roll that out with new partners moving forward.
Excellent. And regarding safety then, because that's always the way, and there's always there's scammers for every single thing. How are you protecting yourself and protecting the users?
Yeah. So it's fully decentralized. Even when you're binding your email address, it's done through ZK proofs, zero knowledge proofs. So we never have access to your email address at any point. This is also never available on chain. And you need to have access to this email address and to these exchange accounts in order to bind these addresses to your ID. So only you, Roy, once you sign up with your email address, only you can bind your deposit addresses for each exchange to your ID. So there's no way to change the ending address or where the funds will go unless you have control over the email address. So the security is just as robust as any other platform where you're logging in with your email credentials. And all of the information can only be modified by the owner of that particular email address. So it mitigates all of those safety concerns. There's no way to overtake it unless you give someone else your email address password. Like you have with any other online platform. You would, when you access your bank, your online banking, you need your email address and password. It's just as safe, and it's the same exact methodology in this case. It's just to tie in your deposit addresses instead of, other information like banking details.
And all these different companies, they must be very happy with that, because I presume once this is kind of reaches the masses, there's a lot less admin for them when things are going wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the main value propositions for exchanges is it can just really reduce the support oversight they need. There's so much spending on their end for customer service, oh, why aren't my funds arriving yet? What happened? Did they go to the wrong chain? Why don't I see them? And this eliminates a lot of those risks because you never really have to second guess it. If you have Ethereum or an Ethereum based asset, you'll only be able to send that on chains that and exchanges that accept that type of asset. Same with Bitcoin, same with Solana assets. So yeah, for the exchange side, there's a huge opportunity here to lower their costs as well as increase their, the funds that they're keeping on their exchange because it makes it a lot easier for users to do this deposit process.
And with kind of getting involved, setting up and everything, do you go through the know your customer, all that information? You don't have to give passports
No.
and yeah.
No, we're fully decentralized. There's no KYC, there's no AML. For us, it's all about what the user. So we don't actually change any of the usability. We just kind of identify and label what's going on. So we're not responsible for any of the transferring of funds. This is all up to the user. And it's a fully permissionless and decentralized application. So if you're sending funds, whether you're doing that legitimately or illegitimately, we don't change that. And having a payment ID doesn't change that. It just provides a label for those transactions. So we're not actually involved in the wallet creation process and the deposit process. We just build infrastructure to streamline that process for the end user.
And with the system that you're creating, it's like you said, kind of yearly renew. Is that the way that the customer then pays? That how you generate your income from that? How's the whole system work?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how we generate revenue on the user side. We have a yearly renewal cost. These are for our decentralized identities like .bnb on BNB chain, .arb on Arbitrum, .ip on Story Protocol. So these are all paid services. They start at $5 per year. So very standard entry level cost. You could even buy domains on secondary marketplaces for cheaper. If that's something that you're interested in as well. But we've also seen rare domains sell in the five figures, $50,000 plus, because it's such a rare domain, similar to having like a Rolex or a rare car. All cars get you from point A to point B, but some people like having flashy ones or expensive ones or very, hard to access models that kind of showcase their status. So we see that in the domain side as well. For our payment ID, this is a fully free feature. So there's no payment required either on the user side or on the exchange side. This is just infrastructure we've built out as a way to bring more value to our users and to the ecosystem as a whole. So there are different ways to use domains. Some are free, some are paid. It kind of just depends on your on-chain journey and what you want to accomplish.
Excellent. Mm, just curious, I mean, obviously you're not going to settle with that. Like, what's your plans for the moving forward?
Yeah, so we have a lot of areas we're focusing on. Of course, we're going to be building out new domain name services for new chains and ecosystems where they need this identity infrastructure. That's always been our bread and butter. But like the AI agents, like these on-chain assets, we're looking at ways to expand on-chain identification outside of just the end users and humans. So building out identities for AI agents, building out on-chain identities for these new launch pads so that it's easy for users to differentiate between tokens. And then also building out platforms so that you can understand and read and interpret this data in an easier way compared to something like a block explorer where all the data is aggregated, but it's very complex to be able to actually navigate. So we're gonna be, reimagining what this on-chain interaction process looks like for everyone. We're definitely going to try and make it easier to use where you don't need to just be, a coder or a software engineer to be able to decipher it. We want this on-chain information to be accessible to anyone, whether they're, a financier, a trader, someone just, using blockchain more casually. We want to make sure that it's easy for them to use and understand. So we're definitely continuing to focus on the identity aspect of blockchain, but expanding that out from just user identities to all different types of on-chain identity.
And regarding NFTs, then, like, because I've looked at a lot of different platforms and everything, is that incompatible, and how does that work?
Yeah, so each of our domain names is represented as an NFT because they're non-fungible. So they're all on-chain assets, they're all on-chain tokens, But if I own Harrison.bnb and you own Roy.bnb, those are two totally different domains. They may have different values. There may be different people that want them. So they're not interchangeable in the same way that one Bitcoin is worth the same as any other Bitcoin. Each domain has its own individual value. So they're NFTs. They can't be freely interchanged because there would be a loss of value on one side or the other. So we're one of the few companies that actually uses NFTs without that being the main selling point. We use the underlying technology because it's a strong way for us to make these unique verifiable token identities that each user can own. Before spaceid, I worked at an NFT marketplace, so I was there the entire time watching this, speculative art bubble, peak and then pop. And I think NFTs still have valuable use cases. I don't know if we'll see another art resurgence where, a monkey profile picture is selling for $20,000 and then there's a new one every 5 minutes. But the underlying technology has a very important value proposition. And I think we're going to continue to grow that, not only from the identity side, but also for other unique on-chain assets. So if you're an NFT speculator or investor, I would say be careful. We've seen this bubble pop and I don't know if it will ever be coming back, but the underlying technology that it offers is definitely useful and will definitely continue to grow in its capabilities.
Yeah, I've seen like with the utilities, it makes way more sense than even artists, and they give different things. But what at the start it was very hard that you didn't know if the person used the utility, like if they bought a picture and it had the ticket to an event, you didn't know where you're buying it. There wasn't a way of actually determining what way it was in the utility. And then there was like, because I was looking at putting because I had seen somebody like having art that you have like a museum that you can go in and look at like 3D art with music and stuff like that. But all of the platforms I was looking at, I was like, and even when I was bidding stuff like OpenSea and stuff like that, you could see scammers and bots and nobody wanted to know about it. That was the sad thing about it. I was like, hey, I'm not protected here, and they know that this is going on. So you have bidding going on that's not real and they allow it. And, it's a sad, and then I was looking at all different platforms thinking, all right, I wait, and I find one and then it's gone. And it's like, that's a sad state of affairs, the way it went. And like, the reality is there's a load, like musicians, everything, artists, so many, even real estate now, because I see that the real estate can be done where it's fully traceable as well, because there's scammers and everything. And the reality is if it's done properly, you can trace everything. And I think having a system like yours where it's simplified, because that's the problem, is everything is complex and then you're going into their system and you don't know what they're doing, because most of the time, if it's their own system and they're controlling everything, like it's like you're if it's not on a cold wallet, can you really trust them? So I think everything that you're putting together is very exciting.
Yeah, that's really what we want to focus on, is building that trust, especially like you're saying, if there's real world assets coming on chain, if you're buying stocks or real estate, you want to know that and feel comfortable with the person you're buying it from on the other end. So through domain names, it's very easy to verify what entity they're coming from, who they are. It's not just a random OX wallet address. And then when you're copying that, which you see in the NFT space, in the meme coin space, once you see one project that's successful, you see hundreds of copies coming in underneath. Through these on-chain verifications, it makes it very easy to determine which is the real deal and which is the copy. So it does kind of mitigate a lot of that scamming potential, because it very clearly differentiates the original from the copies. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's going to be very important moving forward, especially if we want to onboard, standard, more generalized users. They're going to need to have a very comfortable, easy way to do these types of interactions. And on-chain identities are going to be a cornerstone there in providing that verifiability and trust.
And with the payment system, then, is that anywhere and everywhere, or is it going to be regulated? Because it annoys me that some countries you can't make a transfer for, and they always go, oh, terrorism and this and that. And like, I heard of somebody that they were trying to buy a washing machine for their family in Iran, and they weren't able to send it, and they were like simple things like that they're blocking. Is this something that can oversee that? Because like PayPal and all that, they're fleecing people, and they take up to 10%, and I mean, obviously Visa, MasterCard, same thing, all crap. That's my pain point in life. I think these guys have it controlled, and if we can push them to the side, it's better for humanity. But how can you see this work? Can you see that if I want to pay somebody in Bangladesh or if I want to pay somebody wherever, I'm able to do it? Or is it going to be still controlled like the other systems?
I think there will be a mix. I mean, I think you already see with stable coins like USDT, USDC, you can do these payments you're talking about. So you can send funds internationally in 1 second to anyone, and there's no rails to moderate that. It's fully permissionless. It's fully decentralized. If you want to send funds to someone that is on a sanctions list, you can still do that with stable coins. And with payment ID, we don't change the underlying procedure or the underlying infrastructure to send these payments. We just provide a label to that. So we're not actually building out the infrastructure. We're just building out that labeling product. And I think it's going to continue, to become more and more important. Even for me, I accept my salary every month. We're a very international team. I accept stable coins. Many of my colleagues accept stable coins. If you're dealing with countries like, in our case, Singapore, America, Israel, each country has its own banking regulation. It has its own framework, and stable coins just make it very easy to bypass that and leave it up to the end user to decide how they want to process the payment. So I deal with my bank directly every time I'm accepting my stablecoin payment. I don't have to leave that up to the employer to deal with, dozens of different countries and their infrastructure. And then when they send funds, they have to wait for a few weeks. They have to make sure that it's accepted by each entity. So yeah, there's benefits, again, like everything. There's pros and cons to decentralization. It does make it instantaneous. It does make it able to be sent anywhere in the world to anyone, but it also opens up opportunities to evade some of these sanctions or some of these red flagging capabilities. So at the end of the day, it will probably go down to the on ramps and off ramps. Even if you send money to someone, it'll be up to the kind of last stage, when they're transferring those tokens to fiat currency. That's where the regulation will come in. But I think we do see, it getting easier and faster to send these funds. And I think that's where the entire traditional financial industry will continue to move towards, because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's verifiable, and it's instantaneous. So yeah, there will be some downsides in terms of sanction evasion. But it will be up to the last final party that's turning that cryptocurrency into fiat to do that moderation. That's not necessarily on someone like spaceid, who's providing the labeling for the transactions.
Excellent. And just curious with, like we talked about the AI agents, and it's something that I talk on my Awakening podcast. I'm extremely concerned about, the robotics, the AI, the amount of jobs are disappearing because, it's not as if a lot of them can go into something else, So how do you see it? Like, where do you see this going?
It's a hard question, and I agree. I think we see how powerful and useful AI is now. So what's that going to look like in 25 or 50 years? We're already starting to see a lot of these robots start to hit the market, these private robots, which will be like assistants. Maybe they'll do your housekeeping, they'll do your laundry. But those are going to get much more advanced, much quicker. We're seeing factories in China that are now 100% automated. They don't have any factory workers. I think they call them black factories or dark factories, because since there's no human beings, they don't need to turn on lights. It's all just these robots that are able to produce at a much higher efficiency. So yeah, it's going to be scary in some ways, how this changes. I think humans are going to have existential questions of, maybe a large majority of what we considered useful work for human beings won't be needed in the future. And then what do people do? Maybe there's some sort of universal basic income that comes into play, some type of, post-scarcity economy where everyone can kind of have their basic needs handled for them. But it's really hard to say. If I was someone listening to this, I would try and find a hard skill that can't necessarily be easily replicated. But that's harder and harder to find every day, now that these AI agents are getting so advanced.
Yeah, I heard even Duolingo. They came out and said AI first, and I think that's going to be the norm for a lot of companies. So it's like they want to check, can AI do the job, and that's what we're looking at first before we hire somebody. So it's a lot scarier than people kind of realize. I think.
I agree. I think it's going to have an impact on every aspect of our life. in every field, every career. I mean, even doctors these days are using ChatGPT to help with their diagnosis. Everyone's using AI in some way or another. Lawyers, accountants, financial analysis, psychologists, every artists, fields that we thought could only be done by human beings. We're now seeing, AI has the capability to actually do this type of pattern recognition where maybe they're not thinking in the same way as humans are, but they're still able to come out to really useful end results by, analyzing these patterns in certain ways. So it's definitely, we're on a precipice. I think humanity in 50 years is going to look very different than anything we could have imagined. Almost like the Jetsons, like that was around in the 50s, and we're really close to flying cars. We're really close to having our own, Rosie the robot that takes care of all of the tasks around the house we don't need. So yeah, there's going to be a reckoning point for humans on like, what do we do now that a lot of the monotonous work doesn't need to be done by human beings anymore?
Listen, thoroughly enjoyed. Just, is there anything else that we haven't covered that the company's doing that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I think that was most of it. I mean, payment ID, our new work with AI agents and asset identification, human verifiability and human identification. For us, again, it's really just about simplifying that on-chain journey, simplifying on-chain transactions, and make it easier for everyone to use blockchains and, decentralized ledger technology.
Excellent. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed it. You might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So you can check us out online, space.id. You can check us out on Twitter or X at spaceid protocol. You can find me on all social platforms. I'm spaceid Harrison on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn at Harrison Seletsky. You can find me on Telegram at RissyQuicks. Always feel free to reach out. Any questions, interested in learning more about decentralized identities, always happy to chat. So definitely check us out. Decentralized identities have a lot of cool uses all throughout the blockchain space. So I would definitely recommend registering one, start playing around, see how they work, and make your on-chain process easier.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll make sure I'll put all the links both in the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Roy. Appreciate your time.
No problem. So that's all for the Awakening podcast. You'll find everything about me. Scan the QR code, go to roycon.com. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. Sure to comment, thumbs up, and let us know what you think. And every comment I read myself. So as long as it's not abusive, it stays up. Until next week, take care.